Lord, dear Lord, thank you for this session and all the participants who are here to empower, educate us, empower us, and uh, so that we can deal with this issue of domestic violence with the population of our adults and our seniors. We want to thank you for blessing us with the ability to be able to put this program together and have these experts in the field here with us to help us understand this dynamic. We want to bless all of those that are not here with us, who are here with us right now, and are thankful for them. And we're thankful for you and the fact that you continue to keep your hand on us and keep us grounded. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
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 Okay, so I'm going to ask our Vice President, Tanya Webster, to give us a little information, background information about our organization. Tanya Webster.
Yes. Hello, everyone. And thank you for being here. As our club president has said, we are known as the Brooklyn Club of the National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Clubs, Incorporated. The National Association was chartered in
They can't hear us. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
The National Association was chartered in 1935, and the Brooklyn Club, as we are known, was chartered in 1945. We have a pledge that we say, and I will recite it as a member of the National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Clubs, Incorporated, I pledge to become involved, to be constant, cooperative, enthusiastic, and concerned about the problems and social ills affecting the young people of my community. I will help to promote the interests of business and professional women and invest myself in the willing service of others. Our mission statement is, our mission is to promote and to protect the interests of African-American business and professional women, to serve as a bridge for young people seeking to enter business and the professions, to improve the quality of life in the local and global communities, and to foster good fellowship. So that tells you a little bit about our club and our associations. And I hope you will enjoy this program and listen to our speakers. And I'm going to pass it now over to our president so she can tell you more.
Thank you so much, First Vice President Tanya Webster. So I'm just going to highlight the directive that we've received from our national domestic violence, and which led us to host these platforms. So domestic violence, women are much more likely to be victims of intimate partner violence, with 85% of domestic abuse victims being women and 15% being men. Too often women hide the fact that they are subjected to violent conditions. Many are hopeless and have no knowledge of where to go for help. NANBPWC will provide education, information about available resources for individuals who are confronted with similar situations, either directly or indirectly. So that's why you wonderful people here with us this evening to help us understand the dynamics and to um, be knowledgeable about the resources that are available. And you all represent the resources that are available so people don't have to feel helpless in their situations. So we commend you for being here. I want to say welcome, welcome, welcome. And Miss Junior, Pamela Junior is our chairperson. And I want to know,
Madam President, I'd like to right now introduce our committee members.
please, thank you.
Lori Ayers Hutchison. We have Dr. Kim Best. We have Adrena Coleman. We have Pamela Payne. And Madam President, we have you, Barbara Biggs Glover, ex officio. And Sister Tanya Webster, we have you, First Vice President, ex officio. I'd like to take this moment also to introduce the panelists. We have with us, well, Adrena Coleman, her father has just passed, and so she may or may not join us, but Adrena Coleman is a survivor. And her statement, she wanted to say more, but the statement that she gave us was, no matter what happens to you in life, you can make it. Don't give up, because the best is yet to come. We have with us Antonio Bascom, Executive Director of Jericho Road. We have Emmanuel DeJesus, Project Coordinator, Kings County District Attorney's Office, Pride Connect Division. We have Reverend Dr. Q Inglis, the CEO, founder, and Executive Director of Not on My Watch, Inc. We have Doreen Lashane, who's the Domestic Violence Director of Not on My Watch, Inc. We have Gladys B. Pipkins, Program Director, AAPCI Serenity House. We have Monica S. Lee, Assistant Program Director, AAPCI Serenity House. And we have with us Wanda Best, MA, NPA, Volunteers of America, Greater New York. With that, I would like to start by asking the first question to get us engaged. And panelists, you don't have to wait to be called on. If you want to respond to someone else's comment, please feel free to do so. So the first question that I want to start out with what is domestic violence? And any panelists may begin.
Okay, so hi everyone. This is Doreen Lashane. I'm the domestic violence director from Not on My Watch. So domestic violence, when you're here in the state of New York, the state of New York, they have a huge definition of what domestic violence is that not only speaks to the intimate partner piece of it, but it includes the ex-boyfriends, it includes the ex-husbands, it includes people, fake couples who have had a child together, but really did not have a formal relationship, but they're still connected because of the child. So it's such a huge umbrella. So when I'm doing domestic violence trainings, I like to just bring it home, right? Because it's already a complex and convoluted situation as it is. I like to define domestic violence simply as saying when it's about power and control, where there's one person inside that relationship willingly and willingly exercising their power and control over the other partner. They're not doing it unconsciously. They're doing it consciously, where this other person, for lack of a better term, is almost at this person's beck and call, but with no options and no say so with how their lives is being lived or handled. So I like to do the short version. And I also like to include what domestic violence is not. Domestic violence is not the victim's fault. And I think this society as a whole, people tend to forget that. because it's quick to ask the victim, why don't you leave? Or you should not do this, or maybe you shouldn't do that. Really penalizing and victim shaming the victim. So I like to include in the definition of what domestic violence is that it is not the victim's fault.
So I would like to chime in on that. With you have domestic violence and you have intimate partner violence. Domestic violence is violence within the family unit. It could be the children against the parents, the grandparents, the children against each other. That is domestic violence. Intimate partner violence, there is a difference between the two. Intimate partner violence is strictly for violence between people who are intimately connected, whether they have a child together or in a relationship, or as Doreen said, have been in a relationship. It's strictly with the person that they have intimate relationship with. Intimate partner violence and domestic violence. It is about power and control, whether it's power and control of one member of the family over another member of the family, or power and control in an intimate relationship.
I think it's also important to add that there's no time period, that it can be once, it could be multiple times, and there could be time in between. A lot of times people assume that it has to be continuous in a very short amount of time, but it can stretch. Sometimes it can just be when a woman is pregnant, and that the attention that the other person used to receive, they're no longer receiving, just for example. And then that's when they're sort of lashing out. So there can be different forms and different times when they view and this occurs. And also to point out that this can happen across the spectrum of, it doesn't matter someone's ethnicity, it doesn't matter someone's age, it doesn't matter someone's socioeconomic status. This can happen to anyone. Someone who has a really successful career, someone who stays at home. So it's very, very important that that's also taken into account.
So domestic violence, on my part, is a non-discriminatory act. It reaches over culture, it reaches over countries, it involves economic, it involves sexual violence, it involves verbal, it involves psychological, and it involves also spiritual, right? It's a spiritual breakdown of the person. The person used these categories in order to take control over the person's life, right? Most people that physical is being the worst part of the violence. Usually the physical part heals. It's the psychological and the verbal part that continues to taunt the person that's in the domestic violence situation. And what happens is the mental trauma that they go through is what continue to face time and time again when they and relive the moments, even when the person is not there. So again, it's the domestic violence has a lot of psychological trauma that's involved in it that affects the person not only at the moment, but throughout their life.
Thank you for that.
The next question I would like to ask is, as to our elders, what is elder abuse? You know, a lot of times our elders, I just want to say a lot of time our elders, they depend on family and friends to, you know, assist them and, you know, get them from point A to point B. And sometimes family or friends are not as patient as they could be. And they may have a tone in their voice that may be a little threatening to our elders. But what can you speak on that?
Well, I would
A lot of
say,
us,
elder abuse, you would see the same dynamics pretty much as you would see in domestic violence, intimate partner violence. You would see taking advantage of their money, financial abuse, you will see physical abuse, you will see verbal abuse, you will see psychological abuse. So abuse is abuse. I guess the way the term is to distinguish if this is a senior person, elder person that's experiencing the abuse. The abuse will come from family members or caretakers or somebody responsible for the elder person if they depend on family members. So it's abuse similar to domestic violence. However, it's focused on the senior.
I think to add to that too, if you bring it in the context of domestic violence, there are seniors who are actually in intimate relationships that are also being abused
That's
at a
right.
later stage in their lives. I'll give you an example. I did a presentation at this center out here in the Bronx called Pep for Seniors. And one of the women was like 70 something years old. And she said she stayed with her husband because like who was gonna want her if she left him? Right. And so that was rationale for staying in this abusive relationship. So when you hear the term elder abuse, there's like two sides of the to that. There's the piece that Wanda spoke to, and then there really is that actual intimate partner violence that happens in those relationships.
There's also legally from at least from the district attorney's office part, our elder abuse unit is covered starts at 6. So, and I mean, I believe 60 is pretty young. And that's where that starts when it becomes an elder abuse case. And like most, people stated, there's some feedback.
I'm gonna turn my mic to make sense. It's not me.
With the elder abuse unit that we have, like some people stated, it's not just the intimate partner violence, which there definitely is, but it's also the caretaker. So it can be, someone's grandson, someone's granddaughter. And a lot of times it's not necessarily physical, but it's just the person that they really depend on or someone who's taking advantage of them, as we see with intimate partner violence as well. We also do see a very high number of, if there is sexual assault or sexual abuse, we also see a very large number of STIs on the rise with population. And a lot of times that is not something that they're necessarily getting checked, because a lot of times they would be getting checked, if the way they said, if they were, scared of getting pregnant or like that. But because if their partner is also having sex with somebody else and then coming home and then forcing them to have sex, it's very, we've seen many cases where they also then can contract something and not even know. And that's starting.
I'm sorry.
I think that's very young.
Yes, Miss.
Yes, just to add to what the gentleman was saying earlier about the psychological abuse, and also what the gentleman who just spoke said about folks saying, well, nobody's going to want me. Who's going to want me? Those kinds of conversations between the batterer and the survivor begin very, very early. And so that seed is planted along with other statements that are said to break down the self-esteem of the survivor so that they begin to believe I'm not worth it. No one else is going to want me. I can't get a job. I have nothing to offer. And so the uselessness and the hopelessness is something that the batterer builds over time, and the victim begins to believe it about herself or himself.
Isolation is a huge part of that on what you just and sometimes people think that it's not just about who's going to want me in an intimate partner relationship, but who's like even family or friends where someone has been little by little isolated from. Because why would you want to be with your family if you could be spending time with me? This is a relationship, to be the two of us. I should be the one who's the most important person. We should be spending time together. I don't like to talk about me. You shouldn't be over there. These are all things that they say. And it's hard to fight against that. And but at the end of the day, when you are looking for support or you are looking for that help, you find yourself isolated.
Right.
And that's part of the grooming process.
Mhm.
And that's where, when you say it starts off early, what both of you just spoke to, that is the grooming process, how they groom them to remain in that situation. The people outside of those relationships don't understand, why are you staying, not realizing that really not, oh, if he would have hit me the first time, I would have left. No, it starts with the psychological battle. It starts with the grooming. It starts with the love bombing, and it leads to all of the other psychological and emotional and abuse. Absolutely. And I think with more people come to realize, that is really where the abuse start at, with psychological aspect. Maybe they'll have a little bit more compassion for the survivors that are in those situations, as opposed to thinking that they're there because they want to be there, or they could just pick up, open the door, and leave. It is not that simple when you've been groomed to believe otherwise.
And also the frequency, someone talked about it before. It's not that it happens in every situation every day or every week. There could be months or years between the incidents of abuse and violence. And so in those good times, that honeymoon stage, it's very, very good. The relationship is very good. He's loving, he's caring, he's kind, he's supportive. He doesn't say mean things to me. So when there's an incident of abuse, whether it's evil words or a hand being held up, the survivor believes, okay, it's been a long time. He's not going to do it again, especially when the apology says, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. I'll get help. And so it's this cycle of abuse, and that infrequency gives the survivor belief that it's not going to happen again. If the last incident was 6 months ago or 2 years ago, they tend to believe that it's gotten bad until it happens again.
I think it's important too to also recognize that the victim survivor may have also come from a background where in their family it might have been something similar, or that they came from a background or another relationship, or if they moved out of their house where it was even worse. So it doesn't excuse, and it doesn't, it's not saying that they should stay in that relationship. But I've had many people come through where they weren't even the ones that contacted the police, and now they're in our office in this situation, and they're stating, yeah, this is really awful, but my family where I grew up, that was so much worse. This is nothing compared to that. I think it's really important to take that into consideration, and just the community as a whole, the way community looks at UV. I think that's really, really important.
And the other thing is to look at the abuser. All right, we focus on the victim, but look at the abuser. Many of the abusers are narcissistic manipulators. The world evolves around them. They make everybody that's in the life of the victim feel that they are this great person because this is what they show outwardly. But behind closed doors, that's where the Dr. Jekyll and Hyde personality comes in. Behind closed doors, they are a different person. And so we have to understand the characteristics of the abuser to understand how it's easy for the abuser to groom the victim into believing the verbal abuse after a long period of time, because everything is stored in the subconscious mind. So they're hearing this over and over again until they become that person. But the narcissistic abuser is never in the relationship because love. They are there simply because of what the person has to offer them. And when that goes away, they become violent, and that's when the abuse starts. So we have to look at the abuser and what are their characteristics. I've been working with survivors of domestic violence for 20 years, and many of them will talk about how they were isolated, how the abuser whined and dined them at the beginning. That's the grooming and roping them in process. Many of them, this is like a common conversation. And so to understand the victim, we also understand the abuser.
When there's children involved too, many times they'll state that, but he's such a good father. Or if it's a male victim, they'll say she's such a good mother. And there's that conversation that has to be had, because they're not necessarily quote unquote abusing the children directly, but by abusing their partner, abusing the children are witnessing this. So that is abuse. And that it's very difficult sometimes to explain that to somebody, because they're not seeing the abuse directly to the child, only to themselves. And so they're like, but the child needs their father, the child needs their mother. And having those conversations with that trauma is still getting to the child. That is still, they are still hurting the child by hurting you.
And what
There's
happens with the child?
one more that I want to say. I know I came in late. I just wanted to chime in. There's a thing called compulsive repetition, or some people call it generational cycle, right? And compulsive repetition is when somebody is living in the condition of an abusive, seeing their father or parents in an abusive relationship, and repeat the cycle that was taught to them at a young age, right? So their normal is not our normal, because a lot of us maybe have grown up in loving homes and didn't experience that. But those that lived in those type of relationships, they find as a child, they find themselves repeating the cycle, being abused or becoming the abuser, right? And like I told you before, they got a thing called trauma bonding, or we call it Stockholm syndrome. And when they go through those things, right, begin to relate to the abuser and take on the attributes of the abuser. So a lot of this is psychological, and a lot of this is because they have found themselves in that position. Now, in order to change that, to change the way of thinking and change the way that they look in life, right? Because what we may see as abuse, right now they're not seeing it as abuse because this is what they have lived all their life. And that's why they call it competitive repetition, or OCD, abusive compulsive disorder.
What I would like to add regarding the children is that keeping the children in a violent environment, it has a psychological impact even if they are not being abused. Even babies, before they're born, say the mother's 9 months, the baby can hear what's going on. So when the baby is born, they cling to their mother, they cry a lot. It's difficult to get a babysitter because they don't want to be away from the mother. When they get and become toddlers and they're in daycare, these children are aggressive or they're withdrawn. Children that grow up in a violent environment, they have higher dropout rates, lower reading scores, lower math scores, more likely to get involved with substance abuse to kill the pain, more likely to drop out of school, more likely to have early pregnancies, teenage pregnancies. So just imagine you're going to a little child and you're going to school, but when you left home in the morning, mother and father or whoever, they were fighting, and now you're in school. How can you focus on what the teacher is saying if you're thinking about what happened this morning? Is my mother safe? When I go back home, will my father be locked up? And so keeping the children in a violent environment does more harm than good.
And I would like to add to
say something? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, man.
I would like to add to the flip side of that. I always look at things like from almost like the flip side. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've worked with numerous families the children have suffered exactly what you said. Those characteristics are right on point. But my argument is always this, because, when you remove those children, right, in a sense of speaking, some of them feel as though they're being penalized for what the adults are doing. Right. So if you have children in a household where there's domestic violence, and let's say ACS come and remove those children, now they are being re-victimized because they're being removed from their mothers who may be the victim. but also being re-traumatized. They're already being traumatized by witnessing, let's say the father is beating their mother. So they're already being traumatized by living in that environment. They really are victims of it, even though they're not being physically abused, but emotionally and psychologically, these children are being worn down and they are being abused. Now you have them removed from their home. That's very traumatizing. I know grown-ups who have lived those scenarios, who have lived in those homes and was removed and placed in foster care. I know a young lady now, she's 42 now, and her life is still in a because when she was removed at 10, she ended up in 15 different group homes because they felt she was safer in foster care than she was a home where her father was beating her mother, as opposed to services being provided, or as opposed to the family, the mother and the children being provided with resources or removed so they can all be safe. They removed the children. And so this is somebody who is still wandering, I like to call, in her life, not so much because of the domestic violence, but because of what happened when she was removed and placed into 20 different foster homes, where she was molested in 2 of them. Right.
So I
So
was referencing.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree with you
Yeah.
that it's not an ideal situation for
Right.
removing them is also not ideal.
But I wasn't talking about removing the children totally and putting them into foster care. I was speaking in reference to the mother with the children going into DV shelter for
Yes.
safety. That is what I was talking about. You are
Okay.
absolutely correct when you talk about totally taking the children. I have seen that. Totally taking the children and putting them into foster care. I saw a case with and I'll never forget this. The little girl was screaming that she wanted her mother. And I'll never forget her little voice. And they took her away. And the mother was actually in the DV shelter, but she was doing some things too that wasn't correct. And they took her and put her in the foster care. You're absolutely correct. Those children that go through that system have emotional problems later in life.
I'm sorry, this is Pam Jr. I want to ask a question here. I have with us Gladys Pipkins, Program Director of Friendly House. And with I have Monica Lee, who's the Assistant Program Director at Friendly House. And this is a DV shelter. And I'd like for them to give us a moment and talk to us about when families, mothers and children, even fathers and children come into their facility. What is the process when the family comes in? How do they make them feel comfortable? Can they share, and the children, can they shed some light on what they provide and what they see on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
No.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I've been at City House for 17 years, and to me, it's like a second home. We receive women, we receive men with children, believe it or not. And we try to make it a family type atmosphere. While it is an institution, we don't want to display an institution-like atmosphere for the moms, for the fathers, and especially for the children. So we have 40 apartments in our building, you know, where it's independent living. They have their own kitchen, their own bedrooms. It's truly an apartment type setting. We help them from the bottom up. We have some families that have come in, very young girls. They have no idea how to cook. We teach them how to cook. They have no idea really how to take care of their child. So we model for them, this is how you take care of your child. I had a young lady once, she used to come to my office every day with her daughter, and her daughter's hair was sour. And I said, oh my, how am I going to tell this mother where I don't embarrass her, I don't want her to feel bad, but she needs to wash her child's hair. So I kept developing a relationship with her, and I was able to ask her, I said, when was the last time you washed your child's hair? She looked at me like I had two heads. She says, what are you talking about? She had no clue how to wash her child's hair. She had no clue, okay, after you wash her hair is not going to blow in the wind. You have to oil the scalp. It's those little things that we often take for granted. One of the things that both Monica and I have found is while these ladies and men are coming to us for refuge, it's very difficult when they have no familial support. And a lot of them have no familial support. We become their family. You know, have a child care, the kids can go to child care. We model it after a daycare, so when they go outside to daycare, they already have the foundations of, okay, this is how we act when we're in school. This is what we do. Each of the parents are assigned to a case manager. We have case management service. We help them every step of the way. It's not about our goals. It's about their goals. What is it that they want to attain? We offer domestic violence counseling. We have various type of support groups. The most interesting or interested thing that all the clients are interested in is meeting with the housing specialist, because they want their own. And even with them wanting their own, it's amazing to see how many don't have independent living skills. It's teaching them. It's like we become their teacher, we become their role model, we become their surrogate family, we become almost everything for them. It's unfortunate that a lot of people don't want to come into a shelter because of how shelters are portrayed on the media. But we're not a homeless shelter, we're a specialized domestic violence shelter. The other thing that we find is at certain points of the year, our doors, it becomes a revolving door, and it's always near the holidays. I want my child to have a Christmas. You know, I want them to be with the father. One of the things we don't believe in doing is saying to the lady or male that you cannot go back. We try to get them to remember why they came into shelter. What's going to be different now, you know? And if they're insistent on going back, we try to develop a safety plan with them, you know, for them and for their children. It's a lot of hard work. I often refer to where we work as an emergency room. It's a very, very fluid environment, you know, dealing with crises every day. Just because they may be physically out of the abusive environment doesn't mean that it's gone. It's still very much a part of them. They may love their partner, but hate what they're doing to them. And that's a conflict that they just don't understand. Monica?
Everything she said. I have a sense of humor, and if I didn't, I don't know if I could do this type of work. There are so many different variables. We don't just say, okay, we have a new client and this is what we're going to do. And here comes another client, we're going to do the exact same thing. And another client, we're going to do the exact same thing, because experiences are different. Their relationships with the batterer are different, and their reasons for being in shelter are different. And a lot of our clients resent the fact that they are in shelter. They had their own apartment. The apartment they were forced to leave was in their name. We've had clients who owned co-ops and condos, who had houses with backyards and their children had their own room and couldn't stay there. They had to leave everything behind. So there's sort of this resentment towards the system that said, give up everything I worked hard for. Then there are other clients who come to us and they're glad to be with us because they're tired of the abuse. There are clients, I'm sorry, my cat's having a little fit. There are clients who are lost. They don't know why they're here. They don't understand what happened to the family, to this happy relationship, to this dream that they had with the batterer. There are clients who left and would have stayed, in their own words, I would have stayed, but I began to see the effects, the abuse having on my children. My son was beginning to act like his father, and my daughter was beginning to act like me. I needed to leave for them. There are clients who have come to us, and this is not their first time in a DV shelter. They've been in a DV shelter 5 years ago, 2 years ago. They've been in and out of DV shelters because they return home. And as Gladys said, the holiday season is a big turnaround where it's like, we're going to go home. He's invited me out to lunch and we had a really nice time. I know I shouldn't have. If the shelter staff finds out I went to lunch, I'm probably going to get in trouble. No, you're not. This is your life. We respect you and we will try to keep you safe, physically and psychologically. We are, Gladys and I have been blessed to work with her for 16 years. She's taught me a lot, and my staff have taught me a lot. I've learned the most from our residents because when you walk in another person's shoes, if only figuratively, you better understand them and how to support them. We're very, very busy now at the shelter. Because of COVID, we're down a number of staff. And so Gladys and I are wearing many, many, many hats. And a lot, the staff who are there are wearing many hats. And we had a new client come in today, and I made it a terrible, terrible mistake. I left the facility and I failed to give her her starter kit, which consists of pillows, sheets, blankets, plates, forks, cutlery, all of the basic essentials to have first night at Serenity House comfortable. And I was rushing to get home so that I could set up all of the equipment for this meeting. And when I got the call that the client didn't get her supplies, I said, oh, God, please apologize to her profusely. And I will see her first thing in the morning. Does she have anything she can work with tonight? And the guard was very accommodating. He said, yes, I will tell her that you're sorry and that you'll see her in the morning. And I said, I drove 2 more blocks away from the facility. And I said, wait a second, how can you go home, get in your comfortable bed, pull up your blankets around you, knowing this woman and her child are lying on a bare mattress? And I turned around and called, I said, tell her I'm on my way back. And there's a purpose to my sharing this story with you. And I went back and I got her all of the supplies that she needed. And the staff who were there were working with her and they took the stuff to her. They said, Ms. Lee's on her way back and she's coming to get you the things. And the client said, I am so happy. I've never been happier. And staff said to me, This is what I like about working here. You guys really care. And we do. But the reason I did that was, one, it was moral and ethically correct. But number two, the first day they come to us sets the foundation for the relationship that the client has with the shelter and the staff, the duration of their stay. If it starts off bad, it's very hard for us to build a relationship where we can help the client and where they can trust us. I spoke to her on the house phone. I let her know, sorry that I was, and I said, I will see you tomorrow. And I wished her a good night. And hearing that she was happy said, I did the right thing. Meet her tomorrow and I will again apologize. But I know that this client will have a good stay at Serenity House because she already feels loved, respected, valued, and cared for. And that's how we try to start every new relationship with every new client. And Gladys and I have gotten very upset with staff when they've made a mistake or treated a client a certain way that made the client feel bad. Because how can you trust us? How can you work with us if you think we think something about you? I could tell you 100 million stories about 100 million clients, all of which speak to all of the scenarios that you guys talked about with regard to the psychological impact, with regard to the cycle of abuse in families, the long-standing psychological effects that it has on clients. Some clients, yes, they won't make eye contact. They'll tell you yes, they'll apologize for things that they did not do and had no responsibility for. One of the things we do at Serenity House, and we do it as often as we could, and curses to COVID for impacting what we do, is we celebrate when we can celebrate. We celebrate back to school to get the kids, the families motivated and excited about going back to school. We celebrate the 4th of July. October is our domestic violence awareness month, and it is one of the biggest holidays that we can celebrate at Serenity House because we're celebrating clients, and we let them know how much respect we have for them, for the courage it took to leave, to help them see that what they did wasn't wrong, because many clients, they're sitting there thinking, I did the wrong thing. I shouldn't have left. Look what I did to my kids. Look what I did to my family. So we celebrate them as much as we can. We have a costume party in October for our families. It's around Halloween, but I'm not allowed to say Halloween. So that the kids can have fun, so that there's some sense of normalcy for our families. And we have a lot of new clients right now because of that turnover. There's a lot of turnover at the end of the summer. I want my kid to go to this school in this community, or I just want to be back where my support system is. And so they just disappear in the wee hours of the night. But it's important to treat our clients with dignity and respect from the first encounter that we have with them all the way through, to celebrate their achievements and to support them in their challenges and their disappointments. And clients, people can tell genuineness from, oh, she's just doing her job. And one of the things they do is they will see Gladys or myself, and it may be because we're older than the staff, more mature, more seasoned. But I know that we have a great staff at Serenity House, They care about our residents. They care about our program. It shows in the work they do, and it shows in the way that the clients respond to us and what we're trying to do for them. And as administrators, Gladys and I expect nothing less from our staff. We've had many stories where clients have gone home, and we have to respect their decision. But like Gladys said, remind them why they left, and sometimes very graphically, because we know the danger that faces them when they're back, which, as all of you know, because you work with victims and you work with batterers, that returning home is the most dangerous time. And it's not day one coming back. It's maybe a month in or 2 weeks in, where he sees that you're comfortable now. And now he's going to get you back for breaking up the family, blaming you for being incarcerated. And so we try to remind the client that going back is dangerous, and this is what could happen. You need to have a safety plan, and reminding them that you were strong the first time you left, and now you know how to leave. And so if you have to leave again, please do so.
You know,
Yes.
no, I'm sorry. I just want to mention that I've had the privilege to be at Serenity House on occasion. And they have this conference room, this big room, and one wall is full of hands, purple hands. And each resident has the opportunity to write something on this hand. And some of it is heartbreaking. And some of it is, you could feel the sense of the residents feeling comfortable, getting their self-esteem back. You just feel all of this coming from that wall of hands and the notes that are written on those hands. And whenever I would go to Serenity House, I would always look at that wall. Okay, that's all I want to say. Let me stop before I start crying.
It's okay, Pam. But Pam, thank you for bringing up the wall, because the wall is very meaningful to us, and I often can't talk about it without getting a little choked up.
Yeah.
Because when we have our domestic violence celebration in October before COVID, we all gathered with our residents. The children were not there because it could be emotional. It could be, just sensitive things being shown or discussed that were not for children. And we try to protect our children and shield them from these things. But they're upstairs having their own party. But the event ends with an invitation to write something on the wall. And we call it the writings on the wall. And we tell the clients that while you won't be with us forever, once you write on that wall, you'll never leave us, and you'll always be in our hearts. And sometimes waiting for meetings to start, and I'm sitting in that multi-purpose room, I'll just sit and I'll read some of the things on the wall. And I haven't read everything. I always leave a little bit, but it is a powerful, powerful exhibit of just interpersonal communication.
Yes.
So if anyone is ever invited and has the opportunity to come, please look at our wall, read our wall, and you're welcome to write on our wall.
Yes. But Monica, Gladys, thank you so much for giving us some insight into the day-to-day experiences that you have seen firsthand of women and men who come with their families, looking for shelter, looking for refuge, looking for a safe haven, of which you give them. I'll also mention about Serenity House that the little children, they have this play area, huge room, padded floors, little tiny chairs. You and I can't sit in them, they too little. But it's a warm environment to know that the parents are talking to caseworkers, social workers, and the room is surrounded by glass. You can see in the room, they can't see out. And so the parents are able to watch their children as they are handling their business, as they're trying to get their life together, knowing that their children are safe. So, Monica and Gladys, again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Our pleasure.
So sometimes in domestic violence relationships, there is sexual assault. Does anybody want to talk about that?
Mhm.
Madam Chair,
That is really not an easy topic to talk about for all
No, it's
people.
not.
Domestic violence in and of itself is such a complex topic. When you include the dynamic of the sexual assault piece or the rape, in that, it's really heartbreaking, especially I think for someone like myself who have done a lot of rape crisis counseling inside the emergency department in the Bronx. When they come in, oftentimes first they deny that they're being abused, and then secondly, inside that room, that sought room, they deny being sexually assaulted, because again, it goes back to a lot of things that was said tonight, how they still have that emotional investment with that partner who have done it to them. So they really, a lot of times what I found is that they don't identify it as being a sexual assault. And a lot of times they blame themselves for not just the sexual piece of it, but the domestic violence itself. They ask themselves, and a lot of them, what is it that I could have done better that he wouldn't be treating me like that? So when you're looking both of these two together, that's like a volcano in their mind, and they really can't make sense of it, right? So if we as the professionals, if we as those who are having this professional contact with these victims or survivors, or however they choose to identify themselves, imagine how they're trying to wrap their minds around these crimes that are being committed against their persons, and they don't even recognize that these are criminal acts that are happening to them.
There's also the part, if they're married, that also taking culture into context, that a lot of times those who come, and once you really define and go through exactly when we're asking what sexual assault is, when we're saying exactly what we're defining what rape is, and that they still have a choice to say no, even if they are married, it gets very triggering and intense, because it's very possible that one of their children was a result of a time that they did not want to be in any type of sexual engagement. And so a lot of that comes with having the time to really have discussions, and also being available afterwards. Because one thing is to have that discussion, and they leave, but what happens after that? Like, there must be resources and something set up for those individuals. And so I think that that's also very important. It's not just conversations, but also what happens afterwards.
The aftercare.
Mm-hmm.
Not until 1993 was marital rape considered a crime. Prior to 1993, a husband could rape his wife and not be charged with rape. After 1993, that is when the law was passed that if you say no, no is no, and that he cannot pursue. We live in, unfortunately, male-oriented society, and as a result of that, male privilege kicks in. And up until 93, when women started to stand up, got involved with lobbyists, put some pressure on legislators, the law was passed. And so now marital rape is a crime effective in 1993.
Still a least prosecuted crime as well, unfortunately.
I have a question. This is Barbara Bates Glover. In the domestic violence shelters, do you have a population of elders that seek you out?
We have clients, our youngest client ever was 18. She was still in high school. She had a 2-year-old daughter. Our oldest client, I think, was 58. There's no limit to how old they can be, but they do have to be legally an adult, 18 years or older, to come to us. But we had an intake for a client, I think she was 76 years old, and it just wasn't a suitable placement for her because Brooklyn unsafe for her. We're located in Brooklyn, but there's no limit to the age. So we're working at any given time with children, adults with older children.
And just to be clear, your shelter is an undisclosed location, I'm assuming.
That is correct.
But I think that that's something that's really important to know as well, that DV shelters they're supposed to be undisclosed locations, because that's part when people are talking about that a lot of times these families want to see their family or to see other people. It's very much them having to go somewhere and that there are no visitors. There are obviously for safety reasons.
Exactly.
But those are just other other obstacles. And hurt that for a lot of people, it's really difficult to either get into shelter or stay at a shelter for those reasons. But it's really great. I was gonna say it's really great what you did today, just because just for them to have such a wonderful place to stay and your shelter being amazing, but once they do leave you, the experience they have at your shelter will also influence their perspective if they need to go somewhere else. And so the hope is that they will be treated the same way no matter where they go, because as we know, it is a cycle, and many times it doesn't just happen one time that they leave and not go back.
For Volunteers of America, we have shelters in Queens. We have one shelter in Queens, one in Brooklyn, one in Manhattan, and now we recently opened one in the Bronx. And the population that we service, we get them at 18. They have to be at least 18, but we do not take single adults, and that's where the gap in service exists. You have to have a child that can be adult, but you can't be a single adult and come into shelter. It's so unfortunate, a big gap in service for single women who are victims of domestic violence. They end up going to a DHS shelter, which is totally different than the domestic violence shelters, which provide more services, and the environment is different. It's different. It's more
night and day,
family oriented, where the single women, unfortunate to say, you'll get drug addicts or prostitutes or women who just kind of fell off the radar. Whereas in the DV shelters, you will have families, and most people want to get into the DV shelter rather than. So when the women get older, someone asked about seniors, they'll end up DHS shelter. I go into a women's shelter. I mean, it breaks my heart to see you have women there that's 60, 70, 80 years old that's living in the shelter. and it's so sad. And resources are limited for single women.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you.
There's a question in our chat room that I'd like to mention. Someone has asked, I would like to ask, what advocates thought of the New York Times opinion piece that was written for Domestic Violence Month on October 3rd, titled "Talking to Abusive Partners by Phone"?
Mm.
Can anyone address that?
Ms. So, Green, elaborate on that because I'm not familiar with that article.
Neither am I, but for our panelists.
Ms. Green is here though.
Okay.
Okay.
The piece was written by a journalist who has done a lot of writings on domestic violence. In fact, she has a book that came out that a lot of praise in 2019. I think the title was Bruised Women, and she has another book about to come out, but it was really talking about taking a different tactic in working with abusive partners. And it's based on a program, I believe it was Israel that it was first done, and it's been replicated in a couple of countries, Australia, and I think there may be even one abusive partner program here in the States that's trying to replicate it. But it's having a hotline for abusive partners to call in when they feel like they need help. What they've said is that the assumption in America is that abusive partners do not want help, and that this kind of turns it around. And they what I liked was they talked about the fact that, one of the concerns is that because funds are limited, people are concerned that by addressing some of these concerns regarding abusive partners, that you may be taking monies that would have been used for, survivors and their children. But it raises bringing up a different tactic. And they seem to have had some positive results in terms of people reaching out for services, abusive partners reaching out for services. And I was wondering if anybody had seen it. It was on Monday, October 3rd, that it was in the opinion piece. And I was, curious to see what the experts were thinking about this being a kind of new tactic, particularly here in America, for dealing with abusive partners.
I didn't see that article, but I do know that little by little, there are more programs geared towards abusers, standing with the understanding that victim survivors don't necessarily want nothing to do with the abuser. Like they state themselves, most of them, they want them to get help. They want, even if they never get back together, even if it's not going to be a relationship, they still want a positive thing for that person.
Right.
Now, I don't have a lot of information about that because, again, I in the district attorney's office and it's very specific to just the victim survivor. What I will say though, you mentioned something that some people do get worried because there's a certain amount of funding and that funding might be split. I just want to state that it's not that there's only a certain amount of funding. There's plenty of money, just how that money is being used. And so the money's there. Now the question is, are they letting that money go to where it needs to go, or are they? So that's that there has to be advocacy around funding, and very specific social policies concerning that. But I do believe that in the next 5-10 years, there's going to be a lot more push for more resources for abusers and preventative, because I think that gets lost in the shuffle too. Preventative work.
Yeah.
And I agree. I didn't see the article either, but you can't just help the woman without helping the abuser. You have to help both And
Yes.
many of the abusers, they never saw a healthy relate, and the victims too. They never saw a healthy relationship. So
Amen.
how can they have a healthy relationship as an adult? So I think that's an excellent program. You do have some batterer intervention programs currently that's out there, but the focus has to be on both. It can't just be one-sided. It has to be on both men. People might disagree, or we're taking money from what should go to the families and using it for the batterer. But if the batterers never get better,
Right.
then what's going to happen is they're going to keep battering because many of them don't see anything wrong.
Yeah,
You know,
That's right.
so I would support. I'm sorry, Dorothy.
Mhm.
I also would support that. I do know that the current model here in New York State Batterers Intervention Program probably need to be revamped, right? And the consensus also seems to be that the batterers don't want help. I'm going to say privilege. I'm going to say I've had the privilege of working with some batterers. And when you sit down and you really listen to their story, where they came from, while you don't excuse their behavior, it kind of
course.
explains why they are where they are, but they don't have the opportunity for the resources, and they don't have the opportunity to even have to receive services so that they can get over their own personal trauma, so that they can learn how to live a healthy life, thus having a healthy relationship. So I didn't read the article, but you can believe I'm going to go back and read it, because I
Okay.
definitely believe the same thing. If we want to help the victims and survivors, knowing that many of them want to go back to the person that's abusing them, we have to at least offer an opportunity to those that are, that are harming them. So I agree
You
wholeheartedly with that.
you made an
So
excellent
Wanda,
point.
I'm not mad at you at all. I'm with you.
You made an excellent point in stating that the person has to want to get the help. And I think that that's where the frustration a lot too with victims and survivors is, because they're like, well, how does this person not want to get help? Because the assumption is they still love me to some degree. There's still something there. But, and I hate comparing with this, but there are few similarities with like addictions, where in
Oh,
order
yes.
for someone to really get the help that they need and the support, they have to be willing participants. Because if not, there's no way to force someone to
And
change.
they have,
That's true.
And
But I
that's
think
what Doreen was saying in terms of the revamping. Many of the batterer intervention programs now are mandated by the court. So they are made to go. And so they'll go, but are they really getting anything out of it?
there's no therapeutic services that are aligned or connected. So if you're dealing with somebody who's had some type of trauma from their childhood, we all know about the ACEs, right? And if they have not worked on that in their own life, how are they going to be able to be productive in a relationship? And if you're mandating them to go to a program where you're saying go to jail, so I'm going to go to the program, but I'm not receiving any type of therapeutic intervention to help me become a better person. Guess what I'm going to do when I finish my 6 months or my 6 weeks? I'm going to
back
batter
to what
again.
you know.
Yes.
right.
But I want
And
to say something
when I
about what
grew up
Lee
in
said about
household,
the support system. The batterers also need a support system, as well as the survivors needed a support system in order for them to complete and make
Yes.
those turnarounds. If they have no one supporting them, then how do they feel as though that they even have a value to their lives for who they are?
right, and when folks don't realize, because they grew up in a home of abuse, dad was abusive to mom, or mom was abused by dad, and the victim sees herself as her mother and the batterer sees himself as his father, as someone said earlier, that's a normal household for them. I don't see what I'm doing wrong. I don't need any help. My father did this to my mother. My mother was beaten by my father. I thought this was normal. I've had clients say that to me. I thought this was normal. So no one will seek help if they don't know they need it, because they don't know that their behavior is not socially acceptable. one of the things we recognize, and we all do, is that the children are prone to repeat the cycle of abuse and violence and victimization if their issues are not addressed, if what they've seen and have been exposed to. So what we've been doing, and I think we're really concentrating on it in the last 2 years, is having educational sessions with our children when we have events, focusing on anger and how to express their anger in a productive way, how to talk to someone. For the older kids, what a healthy relationship and what not to accept in relationships. Of course, with the mother's permission and their participation to a degree. And we had recently purchased some books written for children about anger management so that our kids hopefully have this one little thing that we've implanted and that they realize this is not the way it has to be, and that perhaps the cycle is breaking with this generation.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I'd like to say, again, Barbara Biggs Glover, I am dismayed with the fact that as a society, we are still not where we need to be, understanding that we should be advocating for the funding to be distributed properly so that the abuser and the victim or survivor is getting the help that they need. Definitely need the therapeutic component to it, at least be offered so that they can get the kind of help that they need. So we are committed to making sure that education continues and empowering people. Education definitely empowers people. When you know better, you do better. And so
Right.
I feel that you guys really are doing an excellent job. But I know that as a community, we have some work to do in terms of making sure we have people in place that will make sure that our victims, our abusers are getting the kind of help that they need. And you're not there beating your head against the wall because you're not getting the kind of access to the services you want to present or you want to make sure that your victims and abusers are getting need to be healthier. So we're going to be committed.
I would like to add that we have to be clear. We say it's about anger management. I'm talking about intimate partner violence. One person can't control their anger. Most of the time, it's the man can't control their anger against the woman. But it's not about anger management. It's about violence against women. You'll see situations where that individual things will happen, and say if it's a male, and he won't respond to the male, but he will respond to the woman. So he can manage his anger when it comes to a male, but can't manage his anger when it comes to a woman. So it becomes violence against women. And I just want to add that. And let's not forget that women batter too. Annually, there's 6 million cases, documented cases of violence against women by men, but there's also 3 million documented cases annually of violence against women against men.
And we know it's underreported too.
And it's underreported, exactly,
Correct. So,
because of the stigma.
Let me ask this question. So the holidays are in sight. How does the economy affect domestic violence? How does the holidays affect domestic violence?
I just want to say there is something about the holidays, whether it's Christmas, Easter, Halloween, a birthday, Valentine's Day, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, a family picnic. It is just something about a holiday that it's for me, it's just I just can't explain it. It just seems like the rate of domestic violence goes up around the holidays,
Wow.
right? I don't know what it is. I just find like on my journey with survivors on holidays, there's an influx, right? I don't have the answer to that, but it seems that for some reason there's an influx.
So our cases go up, and they usually go up around the summer or the holiday break, the winter break. And it tends usually to be because, and I'm not blaming the children, obviously, but the children are home and there seems to be a lot more stress at home, either with childcare or attention or things happening, that tends to sometimes be part of the spike. Obviously there's DV where they're, in intimate partners that don't have children, so that wouldn't necessarily explain that. But we do see that quite a bit with the summer break and the winter break.
Mhm.
But let me ask this question about, so we talk about the children being home. So we've just gone through COVID. Well, we're still going through COVID. And children since last March have not been stable in the school system. What have you seen happening since we went into COVID with family abuse, children? I mean, parents, I guess they're used to going to work. They're used to their children being in school, and they come home around dinner time, everybody, and get homework done. And then within 4 hours, everybody, well, the children are at least in bed, sort of, kind of. And but now you have this 24-hour situation happening. What have you witnessed or learned over these past 2 years?
I will say this about the children that a lot of don't really speak to, that when you're talking about domestic violence with the family violence dynamic, there may siblings may be fighting, or the cops is called because a mom and a daughter is having an incident. There is no talk about teenage children who have lived in the home where there was domestic violence when they were younger, that now that they are teenagers and they're a little bit taller, that they now abuse the victim, abuse the adult partner who was the victim. So if their mom was of domestic violence, you have children who grow up into teenagers, and then they also turn around and start to abuse their mother as well. And not just verbally, but physically.
Mhm.
And that is a topic that a lot of people do not talk about. So if you now want to factor in COVID, when none of the children were going to school and everything was shut down, and we were told to hunker down, stay indoors, don't go outside, and you now have a combustible situation where mom was already being battered before COVID, and now the teenagers are forced to stay inside the house. Can you imagine the trauma that mom is suffering? But no one talks about that, but it's real, because I've had many clients who were actually with teenage children that was brutally and physically assaulting them before COVID. But no one ever talks about that. But it's real. And that's a form of domestic violence when you look at the definition of New York State and New York City. So just picture that.
Since COVID, domestic violence has increased 33%, and that's a global statistic. Not just here in New York, it increased, but globally, it increased. So the sheltering in created an environment conducive to, like Dorian was saying, conducive to a family that's already violent to increase the violence. And that's what you're seeing now.
These are some definitely hard topics, and they cannot be covered here this evening in full. I mean, we would need to have many conversations to just even touch the tip of these problems. A lot of communities don't want to talk about this kind of stuff. They don't want their business out in the street. They're embarrassed. But I just want to thank all the panelists this evening for sharing your experiences, what you know. There may be some people who did not get on this Zoom because they know that we will paste it to Facebook and we'll paste it to YouTube so they can watch it there. They don't want their names streaming up and down this where the names are at. They want the privacy to be able to get the information. We have a lot of information that we have shared here in our chat room. We also have a Google Doc that we will, once we put this onto YouTube, we will attach that Google Doc. It has some 70, 80 documents in it. It talks from teenagers to elders. It talks about children who are witnessing and what is happening in their lives. There's a lot of stuff happening there. We want to get the information out, and we want everybody to stay safe while we get the information out, but we want people to know that the information is there. There is help, and you're not alone. Now, before we end, I'm going to ask one of my committee members, Lori Ayers. We have a PowerPoint presentation that we want to put up because we want it to be part of the program, so it will show who all our panelists are. First of all, it will show who we are. It will show all of our panelists, your names, what you do, your organization. It will also give the link to our Google Docs that has that 70, 80 documents I'm talking about. So that will all be included in this video. So when people pull it up, they may not be able to see what we chatted about, stuff going on in our chat room, but they will be able to see this information. It will be a permanent part of this video. So committee member Lori Ayers Hutchinson, please, if you would share that video with us before we close out. The PowerPoint.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Just take time out to identify persons that have joined us. I see Carl Joseph is here. Hello, Mr. Joseph. And also our Northeast District Vice Governor, Nicole McCatherine, has joined us.
Okay.
Yes. Nicole McCatherine, her mic is off, her picture is off, but she is here. She's been visible and she's been listening. So I want to thank the Northeast District for their presence.
Okay.
Governor Evelyn Streeter Frizzle would be here, but I don't see her. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
Lori,
you.
Madam President, thank you so much. We're gonna definitely acknowledge them again and all the panelists before we sign off, but we just want to get this PowerPoint in, so it is a part of our program. Okay, Sister Lori, I think you have rights now. And Lori, at your pace, move the screen.
Seem to be having some technical difficulty. It is not moving. I'm going to try again.
Okay. Okay, let me see if I can do it. I've never done it before, so everybody bear with me. Can you see that, everybody?
We can see it.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Let's see if I can get us down to the second panel. There we go. We're moving.
Actually, on the top, if you go to slideshow,
Uh-huh.
click slideshow.
And then do what?
And you click from the current slide. You can click on that. Yes. And now all you have to do is click for it to move forward.
I'm going to just let it sit here for another 5 seconds. I want folks to see that link that we have.
I'm using my MBA, and I actually hate using my MBA. You have to do it all by yourself, right? More in-person training and not just for free, but then training costs money. There's a lot of so I have to check in with like 6 lawyers before I can make a single move. I want the program to succeed. No, it's just yeah, right. Thanks. Do not do that. That doesn't mean it. Sure. Yeah, well, I don't have an MBA, and you keep your good idea, so sure what I have to offer. Yeah. This is my son Joe. So we just want to say thank you for letting us do this today. He's doing the ride along. Gibson and I, an 80 car. For my college application, my day fire station sounds like kindergarten show and tell, but if you get into college, okay. Go for pre-med. Yeah, it's the 80 car. Yes, I got it. You're afraid of more homeless people? Ooh. I was one. All right. Okay, well, why don't you sign that waiver that says we're not responsible if Joey dies? And some long pants, okay? This is summer camp. Thanks. Yeah, he talks like that.
Okay, everyone. That way it is now part of our official video. I'd like to take this moment to first of all thank my committee members. Our president, Barbara Biggs Glover, our first vice president, Tanya Webster, Lori Ayers Hutchison, who was my assistant, who was prodding me along with this video stuff, Dr. Kim Best, Adrena Coleman, who could not make it with us this evening, but she's a survivor and she had wanted to share her story. Pamela Payne, who also was helping in the background. So I'd like to say thank you to all of them. Let me say thank you to our panelists. You guys were great, kept it moving, were very engaging, gave a lot of information. As you see in our PowerPoint presentation, we have each of your names, your bio, your contact information. So if anyone needs to contact you and get more information, it'll be there for them. So I'd like to thank Antonio Bascom and Carl Joseph joined us at the last moment. That's from Jericho Road. Emmanuel DeJesus from the Kings County District Attorney's Office, Pride Connect Division. Reverend Dr. Q English, CEO and founder of Not on My Watch. Doreen Lassane, Domestic Violence Director, Not on My Watch. Gladys Pipkins, Program Director, AAPCI Serenity House. Monica Lee, Assistant Program Director, AAPCI Serenity House. And Wanda Best, NANBPWC, Volunteers of America, Greater New York. I want to say just thank you so much. Madam President, would you like to say something? Or Madam President, before you say anything, would any of our panelists like to share anything additional?
I would like to say, although the information was harsh, there is life after domestic violence. There is life after domestic violence, and hope is not lost. There's still hope, and there are services, and there is help. And thank you very much, Serenity House, for the work that you do for those ladies out in Brooklyn.
Thank you.
I appreciate the work that you do. I really do, because together we can make a difference, or that we collaborate and know that there are other resources out here. The more of a difference we can make in the lives of these families. So thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for allowing None of My Watch to be a part of this as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other panelists?
Well, thank you for inviting me on the panel and to be able to share some information with the community. The only way you're going to reduce the rate that domestic violence and intimate partner violence occurs is to educate the community. And as someone said, there's life after domestic violence. I'm a survivor. In 1987, I was in a domestic violence shelter myself. And now I'm a thriver and an advocate. And I use my life as an example that just because you do that, that doesn't define who you are, that you can move past that and get on with your life and live on purpose. And that's what I try to do now to help other women share information. So there is life after domestic violence, and surviving is what makes it great. We talk about domestic violence is so down and everybody's being beaten and psychologically abused, but then there's upside to it that once you get out of it, your life will change, and it will change dramatically. And
Yes.
so I like to focus on that part of it, because we don't talk about that part too much.
I'd like to mention that the Brooklyn Club of the National Association of Negro Business Professional Women will be hosting a Breaking the Cycle of Domestic Violence program on Thursday, October 28th at 7:30, again via Zoom. I will reach out to our panelists to inquire who would like to join us to discuss that topic for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Madam President?
Yes, I'd like to salute you all. You are the light at the end of the tunnel. And I agree with Sister Bess that surviving, coming out of the domestic violence, beating it, and coming away from the stigma and reaching out to get the education, to get the services that you need, and to bring your family forward is the key. And as a community and being part of a community service organization, it is our job to make sure that our communities know what is available to them, so they don't feel helpless, like there's nowhere to go and nothing they can do. As you can see on the Google Doc, and you are representative of it because you're here and you've been doing this work for so many years. And so know better, you do better. And we must continue to spread the word and let people know. And by doing this, I think we're doing a service for our community, so that people are not, so that they are happy and thriving and not surviving, getting through the day. We want them to thrive. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I salute you.
Yes. Madam President, could I ask you to, Dr. Best, are you still here with us? Madam President, could I ask you to give us a closing prayer?
Okay. Yes, baby. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for this wonderful forum. I want to thank you for these courageous advocates that do the day-to-day work with our survivors and abusers. I want to thank you for giving them the foresight and the insight in order to bring a platform of a healthy family interaction. And they continue to do their work and be successful so that our communities are better for it. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen. 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 Again, panelists, everyone, this program will be on YouTube. We'll probably have it downloaded within the next day or two. We will send you the link so you can have it. So for your records, and this way, people will have the information. Again, everyone, thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking about this issue that we like to skip over and act like we don't see it, but we see it. But we need to talk about it. So for those who need help, they will kind of feel comfortable and reach out to us and try to get some help. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.